And welcome, everybody. This is the Mind Sculptors gameplay series. I am your host, Callahan. We have a really awesome couple of weeks lined up for you guys. But before we get into all of that today, just want to take a quick moment to thank you for joining us this week. If you like this episode or any of our other episodes, please make sure to like and subscribe and comment down below. If you want access to our Discord server as well as some extra content, make sure to head on over to our Patreon at patreon.com/themindsculptors or check out the link in the description. Today, we have a little bit of a reunion on our hands. We are having two titans of the cEDH content creation groups go off ahead against each other. We have Cobblepott and LabManiac Dan representing the LabManiacs, and they're going to be facing off against Spleenface and Sickrobot from Into the North. Joining me today for this first week of this 2-week gameplay series we've got for you is Fenix. Fenix, this is your first time stepping into the booth with me so far on the gameplay series. Historically, Sickrobot has been giving you a hard time for your gameplay decisions. So now it's your turn to return the favor, and we get to cover the LabManiacs.
Yeah, this is awesome. I'm super excited to be super critical of every decision that Sickrobot makes. And everyone else is perfectly fine. They're great.
Specifically Sick.
Yeah, exactly.
So we've got some really cool stuff in this game here. Like I said, we've got Dan from the LabManiacs. He's joining us, and he is going to be playing Elf Ball Marwyn. This is a deck that some people might be familiar with, but it really hasn't really done a whole lot since Dominaria came out and when it first kind of struck onto the scene. So just kind of an idea, Phoenix, of what this deck is trying to do.
Yeah, so we're trying to play a lot of elves, make a lot of mana, and play some big green payoff for all those elves and all that mana. So Marwyn specifically pumps herself up a lot bigger the more elves you play, and then you're trying to find cards like, say, your Glimpse of Nature or other card draw on creature spells to fill your hand up, and then play a bunch of spells, play a bunch of creatures, and then spend all that mana on, say, a Craterhoof Behemoth and trample over the board with a giant ball of elves.
Yeah, literally elf ball, as it were. This deck is playing a few, I think one specifically new card from the new set, and that's Toski, Bearer of Secrets. And, in this list is a notable card over Orin Frostfang, and we've discussed this a little bit in the podcast. But, playing this over Orin Frostfang, how do you feel about, this in that slot?
So for this deck specifically, it isn't counterable, and that's going to be the key line of text over Orin Frostfang. Orin Frostfang is great if some of your creatures have trample. Just get a little bit more damage over with that Death Touch, and then give them a pseudo unblockable on the attackers. But in this case, Toski is great because it's uncounterable. So it's one of your only draw engines in the deck that's really uncounterable, and so you have to actually use exile removal on it as well.
Right. Yeah. We're also playing, like you said, we're playing some Glimpse of Nature effects in this list. Some other cards that are notable, stuff like Life's Legacy, Soul's Majesty, I believe even stuff like Benefactor's Draw makes it in here. And this is just getting that density of card draw. One interesting thing is I do have a deck that is similar to this. And this is not playing I believe it's the 4 mana draw 3 card. What card am I thinking of? I can't think
Harmonize.
of it. Yeah, Harmonize. It's not playing Harmonize, but it is playing a couple other different effects in that. I believe the one that would probably be in that slot is Momentous Fall.
Probably Return of the Wild Speaker has kind of pushed Harmonize out of the choice in mono green.
Okay.
Return of the Wild Speaker is amazing when you get a big creature like, say, Marwyn, and you get to draw a bunch of cards.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, really excited to see how this deck performs today for LabManiac Dan. His counterpart, also originally from the LabManiacs, is our good friend Cobblepott, and he is going to be playing Fair Magic. So this is a deck that we actually have only seen the deck tech of actually on our channel, because the first episode that we did that it was featured in, and I believe it was the only time it got featured, was the episode that Pongo had the nuts and went turn one with the Roger and Silas and won. So this is really like our first opportunity seeing this deck really go. So for some people who maybe haven't listened to the podcast episode, didn't watch that first gameplay series episode, really, what is Fair Magic doing, and what are some notable cards in the list?
Yeah, so Fair Magic is trying to enforce fair magic on everyone at the table. We are playing Rule of Law, we're playing Arcane Laboratory, we're only playing one spell every turn, and then we're getting around it with our own deck with Kenrith and all the amazing abilities that Kenrith has, and just kind of breaking parity on the Rule of Law stacks pieces. And then we include the Knowledge Pool lock that you would think of with Lavinia. In this case, not actually playing Knowledge Pool, but playing Possibility Storm. And then you use Lavinia or Draneth Magistrate and don't allow your opponents to cast any spells. Same kind of concept with a Dovescape. And then we're just kind of playing as many high value on the board value engines as we can.
Right. And one of the ways it can close out, and this is something I think people should keep an eye on, is it does have the Emil the Blessed and Dockside Extortionist loop, which does get around those Rule of Law effects, which specifically Temur Sabertooth can't get around.
Yep, exactly. And then it has a couple of interesting includes something like a Hermit Druid to actually just on the board win the game if you have enough mana with Kenrith to return your Thassa's Oracle. And then some interesting, not usually heavily played value pieces in cEDH, stuff like Oko.
Yeah, it's a really interesting deck. It goes a little bit of a different direction than you and Pongo's kind of version of this 5-color Kenrith stacks list. But it's honestly, I've got to play against it a handful of times. It's a really neat list. And of course, Cobblepott is the always has an interesting deck lined up for us. So excited to see how this one goes down for him. On to their opposition now from the Into the North team. Starting off is gonna be Spleenface. Now, Spleen is playing a older version of a deck that I feel like has fallen out of favor a little bit in recent history, is Kykar Wind's Fury. So people who might not be aware of this deck, really what it does, I believe this kind of went off a little bit when Elsha got printed. And so what is it that Kykar does and really brings to the table over some of these other Jeskai commanders?
Yeah, so originally a lot of people were playing Kykar with Diversion transformations, and then this was not that build, this was the other build that a lot of people were exploring at the time that Kykar got printed. And so it is just basically a Jeskai Storm deck. So it is trying to play as many spells as it can to make some spirits, and then spend those spirits to make mana to cast more spells, to make more spirits, and continue onwards until it finds a way to win the game.
So on and so forth.
Exactly. Some interesting cards that it does play is something like False Dawn, which is a 1-and-a-white sorcery that I'm sure almost no one other than Kykar players has ever played. And it turns all colored mana symbols and all permanents you control and all cards that aren't in play into white until end of turn, and then you draw a card. And so what this actually does is it makes Kykar's Sacrifice a Spirit ability add white mana, and then all your cards that have colored pips cost white mana. So Kykar becomes able to cast every spell in your deck with spirits. And there's some other interesting things like Kindred Discovery, drawing your entire deck every time you cast spells.
Yeah, it's a really interesting deck, and one notable thing, for those of you who are listening who are not familiar with Phoenix and his deck building, Phoenix is one of my good friends from here in my local community, and one specific card that you always bring up whenever we're talking about a storm list is sitting there at the top of the sorcery list, and that's bonus round. And this is a card that Fenix always considers whenever we're talking storm. Am I incorrect there, or?
Oh, you're definitely correct. Bonus round is value town, as long as you can resolve it and cast more spells.
Right.
Kykar makes that really easy by being a red mana producer, and then doubling up on all those spells that you're trying to draw cards, etc. Is amazing.
Yeah. So we're gonna see exactly how well this does. It's kind of interesting because it is a little bit of an older list, just because the list that Spleen sent over to us was a tapped out list, so that's how old this one is. So it'll be interesting to see how this does, especially considering that his teammate is playing a incredibly new deck. He is playing Koll the Forge Master, and this deck is called Clampstorm. And so if people have been watching Team Turn 3, or if they might have watched perhaps the Crack Open a Kaldheim tournament, this is a deck that is centered around Koll the Forge Master. And really, why is it called Clampstorm, and what is this deck trying to do?
Yeah, so we're trying to storm off and draw our entire deck with using Skull Clamp, and that is why it is Clampstorm. The main combo is you have Skull Clamp, and then you put it on, say, a Dockside Extortionist, make a bunch of mana, kill the Dockside Extortionist somehow, and continue storming off while drawing through your entire deck until you find a way to win the game. Either combinations of stuff like cost reducers on the equip costs, or playing Kobolds and Cloudstone Curio, just making infinite mana, stuff like that. It's no Cloudstone Curio in this case, but
yeah. And I think the if I'm correct, the one of the big wins with Dockside Extortionist is equipping it with Mortar Pod, because that comes down, you sack it with the Mortar Pod ability, replay it, mix, repeat. So it's kind of interesting how this will go. I've got to play against this deck actually quite a bit, and this is a really good one. This is one to keep your eyes out on. Boros is alive and well right now in cEDH, believe it or not. It is no longer the redheaded stepchild. I think it is now officially Lavinia, who's the redheaded stepchild. But here we are, our turn order for today's game. We are going to start off with Dan. He won the die roll. Going second is going to be Spleenface. Third is Cobblepott. And going fourth is Sickrobot. Looking at the opening hands, Sick did keep an opening 7, and it was his first 7. His 7 included Open the Armory, Nahiri Storm of Stone, Masterwork of Ingenuity, Wheel of Misfortune, Recruiter of the Guard, Battlefield Forge, and Mana Crypt. So if you're sitting in that 4 spot, Fenix, and you see this opening hand, this is your first 7, what do you think of this?
That's a snap keep. That's not quite nearly the nuts, but it's a snap keep. You've got a Battlefield Forge, you've got a Mana Crypt, you're off to the races with some tutors, and Nahiri is there as your cost reducer on the equip. Mm-hmm. And so at that point, if you get a 0 drop off of the Recruiter of the Guard and you use your Open the Armory to find a Skull Clamp, and you have Nahiri out, you're off to the races, you're on your entire deck.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see exactly what this does. And it's a great opening 7 for Sick here, going in the 4th spot. Going 4th isn't exactly where you always want to be, but it could certainly... you can't ask for more going in the 4th spot.
Oh, yeah, and then you have the Wheel of Misfortune if anything goes wrong, and that really lets you pivot if need be, if you need to find something to answer what the table is doing before you. So I feel great sitting with this hand.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, going third, like we said, is Cobblepott. He also kept his first 7. That 7 was Marsh Flats, Badlands, Mox Diamond, Chalice of the Void, Thassa's Oracle, Draneth Magistrate, and Llanowar Elves. And so This is a decent opening 7. I would say the Drannith Magistrate seems like it might be coming down a little bit too late, though, right, Phoenix?
Yeah, being third is really rough. It is a turn 1 Drannith Magistrate if Cobble decides to go that way. Otherwise, it's a Llanowar Elves representing some interaction if you draw it. The Chalice is interesting here. It'll be really interesting to see what Cobble decides to do, whether it's play Chalice on 0 or hold on to that Chalice and pump it up a little bit and hit a different converted mana cost. I think personally I would probably play out my Mox Diamond and just play the Chalice on 0, especially knowing that the Koll deck after you is going to want to play a bunch of 0 cost kobolds.
Yeah. Well, we'll see exactly what Cobble does here with that 7. Going over onto the second position is Spleenface. He kept his first 7 as well. He kept Aristic Study, a Talisman of Progress, Mana Crypt, Force of Will, Ponder, Scalding Tarn, and Exotic Orchard. So as far as opening 7s go, sitting in the second seat, what do you think of this one?
That looks like a turn 2 Kykar to me, and that seems like a snap keep. So kind of the same situation as Sick, just in a better spot at the table where you're sitting at spot number 2. It's a turn 1 Ristic Study if you wanted to go that way. Otherwise, it's a turn 1. You play a land, Mana Crypt, Talisman, and then you have a Ponder, or you can sit on a Force of Will.
Right.
And so it looks great.
Awesome.
You can really react to what Dan's turn 1 plays are and determine what way you want to go.
Right. Well, speaking of Dan, he is going first in the turn order. He also kept his first 7. Wow, everybody kept their first 7 on this game. His 7 was Elvish Mystic, Regrowth, Elvish Champion, Natural Order, the Great Henge, and then 2 Forests. So you're going first here. What do you think of this opening 7 there, Phoenix?
So, I mean, obviously you're Marwyn, so you're looking for turn 1 land, Dork, turn 2 Marwyn. So this has that in there. You have a Regrowth if something goes wrong. You have the Elvish Champion, which is a Lord for Elves. And then you have the Natural Order for a tutor for something if the game goes awry after you play the Marwyn. Yeah. And then obviously the Great Henge is a great value engine for drawing off of your pile of elves. So everything you want to see.
Yeah. Well, we will see exactly how this all pans out. We're going to take a quick time out, and we'll be right back on the other side with the rest of the LabManiacs versus Into the North. This is the Mind Sculptors gameplay series. And welcome everybody back. This is the Mind Sculptors gameplay series. I'm Callahan, that's Phoenix. And if you just skipped to this part of the video, we are getting the LabManiacs, LabManiac Dan and Cobblepott against Into the North, Sickrobot and Spleenface. So based on what we saw there with opening hands there, Phoenix, and the decks, we know what they're playing. We know probably what their first couple of turns are going to look like. Who are you thinking is probably going to come out ahead really early?
So looking at these opening hands, I think Dan is probably going to play a Dork and not much else on turn 1. Spleenface is probably going to power out some artifacts or a Ristic Study, and that's looking really good for Spleen. And then Cobble might be putting out a turn 1 Drannith Magistrate, and I think that really puts Cobble in a great position.
Right.
Sickrobot, I think, is going to get the short end of that Drannith Magistrate.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, but that's just kind of how the die roll goes sometimes. Well, let's get into it and see exactly what is going to happen. So we're going to head over to the gameplay here, and there is Dan. They're kind of looking at gameplay, pre-game effects. Seems that nobody has any pre-game effects. You know, I gotta say, as they're sitting here, they're talking about all of this, how wild it is for me to get to commentate over a LabManiacs versus Into the North gameplay, right? Like,
oh yeah, it's even funnier that Spleen has signed Dan's playmat.
Right.
If you see in the bottom left below that forest there. And that's pretty according to plan from Dan there.
And if you're you can't hear the game chat, but he said the reason it's not a snow-covered land is because, and I quote, "Snow-covered lands are for cowards." Let's see what Spleenface has.
Oh, that's an ancient tomb off the top.
Oh. Talisman.
And so I assume that he's going to be playing the Rhystic Study here.
Mana Crypt. Sickrobot does not sound happy. There it is, Rhystic Study. That is a great top deck.
Oh, yeah. And then Sickrobot is complaining here because obviously he can't storm off into a Rhystic Study very easily.
Right. So we will see what Cobblepott does. We got a Bayou from Cobblepott. And we'll see exactly what we get here from him. Now, it looks like Cobble is thinking here.
And so, yeah, I think Cobble's trying to figure out whether or not he wants to pay for the Mox Diamond. And I think in this case, Spleenface is just empty his hand. And so he can turn to the Grand Magistrate. Mm-hmm. So I think I may pay for this here.
And Cobble's not paying for it. Playing a Lanimar Elves, and he's paying for that one. So we're not seeing the Dan. We're not seeing the Chalice. So it seems that Cobble just kind of wants to not play too deep into this Rhystic Study.
Yeah, and I think that's reasonable. And after this turn, Cobble's able to pay for the Rhystic Study for every turn after that.
Mana Crypt there from Sickrobot, who is not going to pay for the Rhystic Study, unfortunately. And we are getting Recruiter of the Guard.
I think this would be a great dockside tutor.
Yeah, so
we'll
if we're sitting here, we're probably looking at, so if we're getting dockside, we're making, 4 mana off of that dockside right about now? Yep.
And yep, there it is.
So if you're Dan, you're going next based on what we know on his hand. What do you think you're going for here on this next turn?
I think we're jamming Marwyn. I think based on what's in his hand, he doesn't have a ton of action here turn 2 other than playing Marwyn.
And he's dropping in another forest, and let's see what he does here. And there comes Marwyn. Pokemon cards. That's not what we're playing.
And yeah, this Rhystic Study has gotten a lot of value so far.
Yeah. It turns out that top decking an Ancient Tomb is really good. So they're going to roll here for turn, and Never Punished Morgan does not take the 3. So he's going to go to draw for his turn. So we're probably going to see Kykar on this turn, correct?
Kykar does take 3 colored mana. So because Spleen didn't open with one of the colored sources, which in this case, the turn was definitely a lot better without the colored sources.
Let's see. He played a Scalding Tarn and is fetching.
Yeah, and so based on the fact that all of the other lands that we saw in the opening hand were blue and white, I would probably get a Volcanic here.
Yeah, that makes sense. Although he is getting a basic island, a snow-covered island, to be clear.
The superior basic type.
The superior basic. Although I gotta say, the arts on those Modern Master or Modern Horizons full art snow-covered basics are just gorgeous. And we'll see here Azorius Signet from Spleenface. That doesn't quite get you to Kykar.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate. You would be at the mana for Kykar if we got a red source. I think in Spleen's defense, this was right after the tournament that he just played and had been playing Magic for a while.
Yeah, and I believe the host was set in Finland. The Finns were the ones who hosted that, right?
I don't remember for sure.
Well, it's for those who are unfamiliar, it was the Tier 1 con. He did end up winning that tournament, so congratulations to Spleenface for that, by the way.
I think he would probably prefer winning to playing perfectly in this game, but...
Yeah, he did, in fact, win that tournament. So Cobblepott here on his turn is going to crack a Misty Rainforest. What do you think you're probably fetching here if you're in Cobble's position?
So based on his opening hand, we have all the colors we need. We have a bunch of green. We might be looking at probably probably a blue-black land. Oh, blue-white.
There it is, a Tundra. That is also a reasonable card to
get. Let's cast
there.
the Drannith in your hand. So, makes sense.
So, sitting on this Drannith for a turn, playing the Llanowar Elves, why would he go that route instead of trying to play it that last turn? Because now Dan does get that commander out, right?
So the difference is the amount of cards in Spleenface's hand. And so the fact that you can pay for Rhystic Study on most of the spells you cast for the rest of the game.
Mm-hmm. And he is going to pay for the Rhystic Study with this Dan. Oh, no, he's not.
No,
but he is going to pay for the Chalice, and he's playing Chalice on 0.
No, he is playing Chalice on 1.
Oh, Chalice on 1 and not paying for it. Chalice on 1 actually doesn't seem that bad at this table, believe it or not.
Yeah, there's a lot of elves. Kykar has a lot of 1 mana draw spells, and Koll definitely has a lot of... Skull Clamp is 1 mana and stops that.
Yeah.
And so that looks like it might have been what Cobble's plan was all along, where he's setting up with a 4 mana on turn 2 to play both the Drannith and the Chalice.
Okay. That would make sense. Well, let's see what we get here from a Sick. His Dockside is getting better and better as every turn passes. It is now making 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana. Although, unfortunately, he can't cast his commander, but he is going to cast an Auriok Steel Shaper. So what does this card do for people who might not be familiar with this card?
Yeah, so it's equip cost 1 less, and then let me make sure that I don't misread the back half of it. It's as long as it's equipped, soldiers and knights you control get +1/+1. And so that text isn't super relevant to this deck, but it's just mostly the fact that it's a cost reducer on the equip.
Okay. So we're going
and it does look like Sick missed his land drop, which is a bit unfortunate.
That is unfortunate. A Null Rod here might be the end of his day. And we are getting an Elvish Champion here. And all elves have +1/+1 and have Forest Walk. So at the moment, they can attack Cobblepott unimpeded.
And Cobblepott's Llanowar Elves is bigger.
It is big. Oh, I guess it is all elves. That's interesting.
Yeah. It does puff Marwyn, so I don't think that Dan has any other play here based on what was in his opener, unless he drew something.
And oh boy, he's casting the Great Henge.
And
that is really good.
Doesn't add up.
Oh, it's not total power. Okay.
So Marwyn at this point would be making 3 mana. And so Great Henge is going to cost 6.
Okay. Well, unfortunately not going to be casting that. That's unfortunate. Let's see what we get here. And it looks like Dan is going to be attacking at Spleenface with Marwyn, who I believe is a 4/4 at the moment.
3/3.
3/3. Okay.
Yeah.
Real quick while we're here, have you looked at the price of the Great Henge recently?
No, I haven't.
TCG mid is $53.
Wow. I remember that's one of the most expensive cards from most recent couple standard sets.
Yeah. I'm like looking at that and I'm like, holy crap, it's quite expensive. So we're now over to Spleenface's turn, and it looks like he had a volcanic island in hand, so that might have been why he fetched the way he did, although it still is a little unfortunate. He just didn't play that, maybe. But let's see. We're getting a merchant scroll here from Spleenface, and what do you think Morgan is getting off of this merchant scroll?
I'm going to guess something along the lines of snap or something to remove the Drannith Magistrate.
That would make sense.
Obviously, Chain of Vapor is a bit unfortunate here because of the Chalice.
Right.
I think Spleen would probably prefer Chain of Vapor because it makes you a bunch of mana.
Mm-hmm. Let's see what he gets here. While we're here, thank you all for joining us today. Just a reminder, if you enjoy this video or any of our other videos, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment down below. And if you want access to our Discord server where all these beautiful people are at, you can head on over to our Patreon page, and you will get access to our Patreon through supporting us on Patreon, as well as you'll get my deepest thanks for helping keeping the lights on around here. So he's still looking at his list right now, and so he's probably contemplating which card to get. And like you said, we're looking at probably something along the lines of like Snap. Ooh. Or Cyclonic Rift.
Paradoxical Outcome.
Paradoxical Outcome, okay.
That's a lot of card draw.
So because of the card that he chose here, what do you think is in his hand then?
So we knew about... Let's see what we knew about here. So we knew about the Force of Will. And so he probably is going to be... And there's another talisman. I think he's going to be content to sit on the Force of Will and use that as his interaction and then cast this Paradoxical Outcome on the end of Dan's turn and fill up his hand.
Right.
And then going to discard there, he discarded a red elemental blast, which doesn't hit. Pretty much anything at the table right now.
Well, it also feels bad because you can't target anything. You can't even cast it.
Yep.
Well, you can cast it. It will just get countered for what it's worth.
Yeah, and I think Cobble's really setting up to be in the driver's seat here as long as he can hit this next land drop, which he just did.
He did. Taiga for turn. And are we seeing a Kenrith? We are seeing Kenrith come down on turn 3. The power of mana acceleration.
And I don't think it's worth using that Force of Will that we know about on this for Spleenface. I think he would like to keep it for something game winning, although this Kenrith might be coming his way with the amount of cards he drew.
And Drannith Magistrate is hitting Spleenface. So let's see how this goes down here. And that's just see what goes on as he passes over here to Sickrobot. We'll see if he can hit his land drop. Hey, there it is. Forbidden Orchard. One of the cards that you might not want to see, but, you know, it's still welcome regardless, right?
It's better than nothing, for sure.
So let's see. He does have 4 mana, although Koll is kind of stuck up there in the command zone, unable to come out right now. So it'll be interesting to see here exactly which way he wants to go. The, what's it called? The Mortar Pod is coming down. All right. And he is paying the 1 for it. So Mortar Pod has come down. And for people who are not familiar with that card, I'm trying to find it here all of a sudden. There it is. Mortar Pod is a 2 colorless living weapon artifact equipment. Has equipped creature gets +0/+1 and has sacrificed this creature. This creature deals 1 damage to target creature or player and has equipped 2. Are getting a Masterwork of Ingenuity, which is going to trigger...
Which gets countered.
It gets countered and draws Spleen a card. Oof, that is a rough misplay.
That is unfortunate. It's definitely not what you want that card to be doing.
So let's see. This is your opportunity to criticize Reed now.
Yeah, I mean, the answer is just don't play it.
Come on, Sick.
So he does have the Dockside and the Open the Armory in hand. Doesn't know about the Force of Will, so he could have tried to go for it this turn, I think, with that Mortar Pod. I don't know exactly what the math worked out to on the amount of times you could re-equip the Mortar Pod to remove the Dranth Magistrate.
I think there is one thing that is notable, though, that the Dockside coming down, I would assume Spleen would respond with the outcome, right? And that might make that...
And so you lose all your treasures.
And the Great Henge. And there it is. Great Henge comes down onto the battlefield, and it looks like he did pay the 1.
Yeah. And so if Dan has creatures in hand, this is really good for him, but it appears, based on him going to combat, that he is out of gas.
They are...
We're trying to figure out what Elvish Champion does, I think.
I think it is similar to Lord of Atlantis, right?
Yeah, so it is errata to only be other elves.
Okay. Other elf creatures get +1/+1 and have Forest Walk.
Yeah, and it is itself an elf, which matters for Marwyn.
Green Sun Zenith for 1. And that gets around Chalice of the Void beautifully. So let's see what he is getting here. Chalice, or Green Sun Zenith on 1. What do you think he's trying to get here?
So just looking through the list, it looks like there's not very many targets that do anything relevant except for maybe an Elvish Reclaimer that are elves. Assuming that Dan wants to keep on the elf plan. Otherwise, Wirewood Symbiote is pretty good, other than the fact that there is the Chalice of the Void out to stop you from recasting more elves.
Let's see what he is getting here. And Elvish Reclaimer. So what does Elvish Reclaimer do here for you if you're Dan?
Based on the lands, it gives you a Wirewood Lodge or a Gaia's Cradle are the only real targets for this Elvish Reclaimer. And it is just a big elf that draws you a card on the Great Henge, and
it looks like...
then lets you get some more mana.
Looks like Spleen is casting that Paradoxical Outcome. Now, this is not as good as it could be in Joyra, where you do this and then you draw a bunch of cards after you recast them. This is just 0 out of 10 right here.
Except for it would make mana if Kykar was out.
That's true. You know what? I guess I'll concede that point.
And blockers. That's a lot of blockers.
So let's see exactly what Spleen here is going to do on his turn. I'm sure he's very glad that Cobble did not put that Chalice on 0.
Oh, yeah. And Dan is just finishing up drawing his card with the Selfish Reclaimer.
And it looks like another snow-covered island from Spleenface, playing a Mana Crypt and recasting the Talisman. Boy, this would be just so much better with a Kykar out.
Oh yeah, all these talismans would be completely neutral in mana.
And there comes an Izzet Signet. And here comes a Zorius Signet. You know, he's got some artifacts over there, and if I'm, Reed sitting over there in that 4th spot, I've got to be thinking about casting my Dockside here soon.
Yeah, I mean, and we know he has the armory in the hand, and so depending on what he picks as a tutor target, he's pretty close to attempting to win.
So if he does cast a Dockside, and Dockside comes down, this is making 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Am I counting that correctly?
I think it is 10. It might be 9 or 10. Spleen's artifacts are stacked up there, so I can't quite tell.
Yeah. Right, he is discarding to hand size. He's discarding a Ponder there.
Yeah, so it doesn't look like Spleen got anything to answer the Drannith Magistrate.
And so he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And there's 7, 8. 9. Wow. This would be a really good Dockside right now.
Oh, yeah.
Volcanic Island for Cobblepott as land for turn. And presumably Spleenface is going to be the punching bag for decks that are wanting to get beats in.
Oh, yeah. I think that Spleen is the most threatening player at the table right now with the Ristic Study. Although we do know that, based on the information that we have from the opening hands, that I think Sickrobot is actually the most threatening player.
And Drannith is coming at Spleenface, and that's going to be it coming at him. And that's it for turn from Cobblepott. So if you're Cobblepott here, are you just trying to sit on some stuff, wait it out, and see if you can find the opportunity to capitalize?
Yeah, I think you're definitely sitting on a Kenrith activation here and maybe some interaction. And so I think that there's the possibility that Spleen or Cobble might be playing table police here and stopping anybody else from winning the game. The issue is the longer this game goes, the more out of control Dan gets, and the better it gets for Dan.
Well, especially with a great henge in turn or in hand or on the battlefield. All of his creatures are just going to be big and big and big and just kind of keep getting bigger.
Oh, yeah. The issue, of course, is that Dan's deck does have a lot of 1-drops, and all of those 1-drops don't end up making it onto the battlefield.
So Sickrobot is thinking right at the moment, and so I'm assuming he's probably weighing whether or not he wants to try and go for it right here. Open the armory. There we go.
Target for open. Yeah.
And what do you think Open the Armory is going to be getting here?
I think Cheetah might be a good pick just because of this board being so clogged and all the creatures on it, and then it possibly lets you kill the Drannith Magistrate.
Yeah, this is a very gummed up board as far as what the board state's going to look like, and it just feels like Spleen is getting the brunt of it at the moment with how many creatures are coming at him.
Yeah, and GT would probably protect your life total a lot, and then the longer the game goes on, the more GT stacks you can get to just kind of remove the Magistrate on demand.
So let's see what he's getting. He is still searching there. It is interesting here as we're getting into the later stages of this game. You're kind of seeing the difference between all of these decks and how they play. Conqueror's Flail, here from Sickrobot. So what does Conqueror's Flail do for you if you're sitting here in this situation?
So Conqueror's Flail lets you try and win without anybody being able to.
And we are getting a Flame Sweep from Spleenface. That is going to deal with this Dan here if this resolves. Although
actually 2 damage. Yeah.
So we are seeing exactly... He's pinging the Drannith for 1.
Yep, and then so Cobble is pumping the Drannith to save it from the Flame Sweep.
So it seems that the Drannith is going to stick around past the Flame Sweep, and I'm sure Spleen really wanted that to stick around.
Yeah, I think Spleen would have definitely preferred the Drannith Magistrate dead, but...
So it goes, right?
Is definitely a necessary evil at this point with the way that Dan's board was getting.
So we'll see here how Dan's turn. He's playing a Forest for turn. And he's playing those beautiful, I believe those are from Innistrad forests, correct?
Let me take a look here. I think, yes,
Avacyn Restored. Okay, I thought I recognized that one. Yeah, those are gorgeous arts. I forget who that's done by, but those are just absolutely beautiful. And we're getting a Wirewood Channeler here from LabManiac Dan. And so what does this really do for you in this situation?
So Wirewood Channeler is tapped to add X mana of any one color, where X is the number of elves on the battlefield. And so this is similar to Priest of Titania, but can make any color mana. And it not being a 1-drop is great because it lets Dan continue trying to fill up the board. We'll see how
this goes. We still have Marwyn available to swing. And boy, this Great Henge really seems like it's putting in some work, just protecting not just Beast Whisperer. Oh, that's not good.
Ooh.
He is paying the one and paying. He is floating the one off the Great Henge, and he will gain 2 life off the Great Henge.
This is not good for the table.
And Beast Whisperer is, and this is just kind of the worst case scenario, right? Jeweled Lotus now.
Yeah, Dan is, that's unfortunate, but I bet Dan really wishes that was an elf, even if it was something that got countered.
Because even if it got countered, it would still pump Marwyn, am I correct?
So it would draw off of the Beast Whisper. The Marwyn actually requires the creature into the battlefield.
I know what I'm talking about. Don't worry about it. I'm a professional. So we go over here to Morgan's turn. He is untapping with, it looks like the entirety of Fort Knox at his disposal.
Luckily for the table, he doesn't have Kykar, which is the jewel locked in the vault by the Drannith Magistrate. But
so we will see exactly what we get here. He does have not a fairly limited red mana, based on just the way things have gone for him. Okay.
Future Sight.
Future Sight. So what does Future Sight do for you here?
So Future Sight lets you continue playing more cards. Unfortunately, with that top card being a delay, you can't actually attempt to use Future Sight as a kind of draw.
This is why we are fans of Mystic Forge in this household.
Unfortunately, the Drannith Magistrate does kind of shut that down, but...
Right. So we will see exactly what we are getting here from Cobblepott as we go over to his turn. And that is a 2/4 Drannith Magistrate, which is got to be frustrating for the table. Marsh Flats is land for turn here for Cobble. And Cobble is just very slowly building his mana and seems to be be playing very like deliberately right now.
Cobble is just going to be on the Kenrith plan from this point forward and just try to stop any win attempts coming through.
Mm-hmm. So we will see, and it sounds, listening to the board, that people are forgetting that Chain of Vapor is one CMC and gets countered by the Chalice.
Yeah, I'm sure Spleen would have loved to use that tutor to get a Chain of Vapor and do a similar thing to exactly what he did with the Paradoxical Outcome, but unfortunately that Chalice stops you.
Between the Drannith Magistrate and the Chalice, it's really been putting a damper on what Spleen has been trying to do.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the unfortunate part of that fetch was that Spleen was a color short on the turn that he could have played Kykar before the Drannith Magistrate came down.
Right. We'll see exactly what we're getting here from Cobble. It looks like he
taking the driver's seat in this game and kind of making sure to find a piece to stop everybody from winning.
Orin Frostfang. So Orin Frostfang definitely puts Cobble in a position to start getting some card advantage, although it does tap him out for turn. And he is swinging with Kenrith and Drannith Magistrate, and this ought to draw him 2 cards as he swings into Spleenface.
Yeah, and that's looking great for Cobble. The Orin Frostfang is great for him in a long game against Dan, and he seems to be fine at this point to draw the game as long as he can.
It seems we are hearing that Spleenface was trying to lobby for attacks at possibly Sickrobot, but Cobble did not buy the politics.
He was not sweet-talked into it.
And there we go. He did not lose the roll there. He got evens. And we'll see what Sickrobot... Inspiring Statue... Wow. Or what card... What is that? That's not Inspiring Statuary. That's Inspiring... What is that card name? I forget that card name. Anyway.
Inspiring Vantage.
The red... Inspiring Vantage. Okay, I was halfway there. So we are getting a fast land there from Sickrobot, although right now it is a bit of a slow land. And we'll see what Sick has lined up for us. And we're getting a Dockside, and that's a big fat Dockside.
Yeah, and this is probably Sick going for it. We'll see if anybody wants to interact with it.
And he is paying for the Rhystic Study with the Mana Crypt. And so this is going to make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 treasures? Does that sound correct? So it turns out that Jeweled
11.
Lotus coming out there from Dan does 11. Oh boy.
It's a lot of treasures. And so we'll see if anybody has anything to stop Sick here.
All right, so we got 11 treasures here from Sickrobot. And he is going to attach his Conqueror's Flail to the dockside, which is going to make it so that nobody can cast any spells during his turn here, which is pretty big.
Yeah, I think that might have been the last chance for any interaction. And so we'll see.
Nahiri is coming on to the battlefield. And Nahiri, the downtick is, wow, she starts at 6. The downtick deals X damage to target tapped creature. He just found a way to get around the Dranith.
And this only works because Cobble had attacked this turn. And so that is a dead Dranith Magistrate.
And he is paying 5 just to make sure that Cobble doesn't have any funny business going on there. And I think this is it there, because Koll is coming down, and you're going to see exactly what this deck does.
And so, yeah, I think Sick is trying to figure out if there's a line here where the flail... Yep, exactly. So the flail never gets off of something, so it's always equipped now.
Right. And a mortar pod is equipped. He's going to sack that, bounce both of those back to his hand, and recast them. And he is going to recast them. And it doesn't matter if Spleen is drawing the cards. He can't do anything.
Yep, and it looks like he was 1 treasure extra over the top, so it wouldn't have mattered if Dan cracked his Jeweled Lotus.
Wow. So there is, everybody. The first game gets taken there by Sickrobot with the Clamp Storm list. So, you know, as we look back on that game and we kind of saw how things really played out there, you know, how do you feel about the decisions that ended up getting made?
Yeah, I mean, so both Spleen and Cobble knew about the Dockside Extortionist in hand and knew that it was going to be a big Dockside, but
right.
Sick was low on cards, and because he was so low on cards, they kind of, not disrespected, but just didn't think that he had the ability to go for a win. Mm-hmm. And with that Mortar Pot out and Dockside in hand, there's some hoops to jump through to go to win in that board state, but it's the combo is A plus B combo of the Mortar Pod and Dockside is just there, ready to go whenever Magistrate gets interacted with, or he can find a way to deal with it. And so Sick was just kind of biding his time, waiting until the exact turn and spacing his cards out over turns, and just hoping that everyone else at the table would stop each other from winning long enough.
And it seems that is exactly what happened there. Well, you know, that was quite the awesome game, and it's interesting. It's. I got to be honest. I love seeing 2-colored, specifically these Boros decks that have historically been very underperforming, start to do really well, and it really looks like you know, we have found a Voltron commander for cEDH. Yeah,
I mean, it was able to get there through some of the worst board state that I could think of for it. There's a Ristic Study out, which makes it really hard to win. There's a Dranith Magistrate before your Koll comes down, so you're off of your game plan from turn 2. And even missing land drops, and it still was able to fight through all that adversity and find a way to get there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really impressive deck. I've got to play against it, like I said in the pregame, a handful of times. And I got to say, I'm very impressed. So this is one to look out for. I would expect this to be a player here in the coming metagame. Well, that about wraps things up here for us over here in the booth. Just a quick reminder that you can follow us on Twitter at SculptyBoys, or you can find a direct link in our link tree in the description below. Want to also give a shout out to all of our patrons who help keep the lights on. If you too would like to become a patron and want to help us out and help keep us going, you can head on over to patreon.com/themindsculptors or check out the link in the description. As always, thank you for joining us, and thank you, Phoenix. It was great having you on for your first color time doing this commentary with me.
Oh yeah, I've done a little bit of color in the past. It was nice to kind of shake off the rust and get back in the flow of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to having you back for more episodes in the future, and looking forward for next week's episode. We're going to feature Dan and Cobblepott versus Spleen and Sick one more week, and we've got a really great episode lined up for you there. Sickrobot is going to be playing classic Viral's Hulk, and Phoenix, you got to see a little bit of this game when they were recording these the other day, and it's got to be great to see, you know, the master of Hulk decks getting to play it in that old school Viral's shell.
Oh yeah, this entire pod is a nice old throwback. So I was filled with nostalgia watching that one, so it's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, well, look forward to that. That'll be next week, and I'll have Pongo in the booth with me for that one. So for all of us here at the Mind Sculptors, I'm Callahan, and have a great time, and see you next time.